From Bishop Ireton High School, it's Real World Wednesdays, a show featuring alumni and friends of the school for the Cardinal community and beyond. I'm Ryan Fannin, Associate Director of Advancement and a member of the BI class of 1989. And on the show today is Christopher Critter Johnson, a 2021 graduate of Bishop Ireton who is set to embark on his career in the Navy after graduating from the University of Virginia in May of 2025. Our first podcast of our second season earlier this year was Patricia McCarter, a 1944 graduate of St. Mary's Academy who is still thriving at the age of 98. That was a fascinating experience because it gave me a perspective about a time from well before I was born. It's fitting then that the last episode of our second season, the one you are listening to now, and the one that will wrap up our 60th anniversary year as well, will feature someone on nearly the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm talking, of course, about our guest today, Christopher Johnson, who graduated from Bishop Ireton in 2021. Christopher grew up in the Alexandria area in a loving family that valued Catholic education. As such, he and his siblings attended the Basilica School of St. Mary's in Old Town Alexandria before stepping on to Cambridge Road. Before ever setting foot at Bishop Ireton, Christopher began tinkering with computer coding after encouragement from his parents. When he followed his older siblings to BI in the fall of 2017, that spark of interest in computer science was fanned into a full-on flame thanks to the mentorship of a Bishop Ireton faculty member. While at BI, Christopher excelled in school, and particularly in computer science. He was nearing the end of his junior year when the COVID pandemic hit, and he spent his last year plus at Bishop Ireton under difficult circumstances. He graduated in 2021 in one of the most unique graduations in school history on a hot day on Fannin Field with cicadas buzzing loudly. In 2021, he headed to Charlottesville, Virginia to attend the University of Virginia, where he would participate in the Naval ROTC program and major in computer science. Just last week, Christopher was commissioned into the U.S. Navy, and just this past Sunday, he officially graduated from UVA. But to understand how he became the well-spoken, measured, intelligent, and down-to-earth young man that he is, you have to go back to his childhood and understand how he got his nickname, Critter, that he still goes by today.
I'll start with the nickname because that, I think, gives you a good example of my family. So when I was like an infant, I have two older siblings, Charlie and Anna, who both went here. My mom called me like a cute little critter, right? I'm less than 1 year old, and she's like, oh, he's such a cute little critter. And Charlie and Anna thought that was hilarious because they were like 4 and 5 or 3 and 4, and they just stuck with Critter. So by the time I was old enough to learn my name, like I knew my name was Christopher, but everyone called me Critter. When I got to college, I thought about switching to Chris, but too many of my friends came with me, so I stuck with Critter, and I mean, I have no plans on changing it now. I've got my two older siblings and my little sister. We all went here, and growing up, my dad is a Marine. He was deployed when I was born, so definitely military family. My whole mom's side was in the Navy. Yeah, I would say my upbringing was super normal, like suburban, like Fort Hunt area around here. And there were all these little moments that I never realized were kind of military family moments, My classic example is when we would like do dishes after dinner as a kid. My dad would assign like who was in charge, the kid that was in charge, because it was your week and you had to pick the other jobs that the other siblings were doing. So, I would be in charge and I would say like, oh, Anna is sweeping and Molly's doing the counters or whatever. Charlie's doing the dishes, whatever. And I remember I have this very vivid memory of one day I had assigned Anna to sweep, and then I finished the job I gave myself, and I went upstairs, and Anna just never swept. And my dad got home and he was like, hey, like the floors didn't get swept. And I was like, yeah, but like that was Anna's job. That was Anna's job, so you can get mad at her. And he wasn't angry, but he was like, no, like I put you in charge of getting the dishes done. I told you to get it done with the help of your siblings, but you were in charge. So you need to make sure the floors get swept. And then my sister had already left, so I was just standing there sweeping the kitchen all mad. But yeah, that's always my classic example of like that sort of military, you're in charge, I'm expecting you to get it done level of trust that I just kind of grew up with.
Tell us a little bit about your education before you came to Bishop Ireton.
I went to St. Mary's, just over in Old Town. And yeah, it was awesome. Catholic education's always been super important to my parents. So that was a very high priority. So all four of us went to St. Mary's, and I had a lot of great mentors and teachers there that really just prepped me for high school and beyond. But one of the coolest things about going there is so many kids from St. Mary's come to Bishop Ireton, so you kind of come in with a friend base. Some of my favorite memories are like we just all thought we were like hot shots in 6th grade when we switched over. The buildings are connected now, but they used to be 2 separate buildings, and we switched over to the new building, and we were like, oh, we're the cool kids on the block. And then we found out that there were these big mean 8th graders, and they ran the show, and just like funny classic elementary and middle school drama that ensued from that. Just created a lot of fun situations.
Now, I've heard you say that it was your parents who first noticed your affinity for computers. Can you tell us about your initial interest in computers and computer science?
I've always been interested in computers. My dad has always worked in like tech related jobs since I was a kid. So I don't know when that like interest started, but my parents, being the awesome parents they are, noticed it at a really young age. My dad bought this little $35 credit card sized computer called a Raspberry Pi, but like PI, like 3.14. And it, it had some stuff on it where you could learn to code and stuff like that. So I thought that was cool. I twiddled around with it. And then I played a lot of video games. And so I was like, I wonder if I can make a video game. So I Googled like how to code a video game. And this, one of the ads that like pops up at the top of Google came up, and it was like, learn to code at, Code Academy. I was like, okay. So I'm looking at this coding course. It's like $50 to learn how to code in JavaScript. And I'm like, let me shoot my shot and see if my parents are willing to pay for this. So I walk up to my dad and basically ask him to take a class. I'm like 9 at this point, 9 years old or 10. And I ask him to take this like JavaScript online course for like $50. And my dad's like, yeah, of course. He loves the idea. I think I'm scamming my dad out of $50. I'm like, this guy, I'm going to play video games with this. He doesn't even know. So I take this online JavaScript course. I don't even remember if I finished it. But then when I got to like 8th grade, I really got into learning to code. And I had that foundation from when I was even a few years younger. So that was just, just phenomenal parenting on my parents' part to really foster that in me from a young age.
Now let's shift to your time at Bishop Ireton. How did you first come to attend Bishop Ireton? Tell us about that process as you were an 8th grader at down in Old Town Alexandria.
I had 2 older siblings that went here. They actually initially went to West Potomac, which is the public school we're zoned for. And they went there for a semester and then switched to Bishop Ireton. It was just a much better fit. Like I said, Catholic education is really important to my parents. And they were just finding that, Bishop Ireton is just a little bit better of a school. It's got a little bit better facilities, but really it's got that Catholic education and there's a chaplain here and a chapel, and you take classes, and it's, it's really ingrained in your learning. And Charlie and Anna just had a great time at BI. They were seniors when I came in as a freshman, so that was kind of a no-brainer for me. Toyed with the idea of going to West Potomac because I had a lot of friends over there, but I also had a lot of friends coming here, and my older siblings made it pretty clear that this is where I belonged.
Now, you started on Cambridge Road at a unique time for the school. Bishop Ireton was in the beginning stages of expanding the school with the state-of-the-art 41,000 square foot academic center that would open in February of 2020. But there was also an added emphasis on computer science and engineering as part of the curriculum. What do you remember about your first time coming to Bishop Ireton as a freshman in the fall of 2017 to expand on what you just said?
It was funny because I didn't know that coming in, that the school was expanding. And obviously it was made pretty clear by the construction equipment everywhere and stuff. And stuff was in transition as I was around. But I think it was the perfect time for me to come in because, that fall, there wasn't necessarily the new facilities for us to use. But by the time I was coming in as a senior, we really had all these new engineering spaces and, new computer science labs and stuff that I can remember getting to help make decisions about because I was just one of the computer science and engineering students around. But yeah, it was also really funny because obviously coming into high school is a brand new experience. And not only was it a brand new experience for me, it was also a brand new experience for the school because of that transition.
I know you attribute a lot of your success to one teacher in particular who was here at Bishop Ireton when you were a student. Who was that person for you, and how did she help shape you into the person you are today?
Mrs. Kelly, right, is I call her my most influential non-family member. Because obviously, like, my mom and dad and my granddad are going to be the most influential people in my life. But other than that, like, it's her for sure. So when I came in as a freshman, we had this class, I guess in the spring you would take it. And it was like Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint and stuff. Just, how to be a good user of a computer. Very important class. But like I said, I've been working with computers since I was a kid. So all that stuff kind of came intuitively to me. And there was this class that you have the option to take. I don't know if you still do, but you did at the time as a freshman called Honors Advanced Programming. And my mom was like, hey, you should really think about taking this class. I think it would be a better fit for you. The teacher of the class was Mrs. Kelly. And I had actually met her when I was shadowing as an 8th grader, my older brother, who would have been a junior at BI at the time. So I'd met her, and to my mom, I'm like, I don't want to be like the weird computer guy. Like, let me just take this other class with my friends. And the only time I can ever remember in my life, my parents have always let me make my own decisions about everything. But my mom was like, no, trust me, this is the right fit for you. I'm going to email Mrs. Kelly. So Mrs. Kelly comes up to me in the hall the next day and she's like, hey, your mom says you don't want to take my class. And I was like, well, that's not what I said. And she's like, no, that's what you said. So I ended up taking Honors Advanced Programming. And Mrs. Kelly just immediately gave me the sort of autonomy that I think I needed to learn. She's just an excellent teacher, and she homeschooled her own kids, so she knows how important it is to let kids learn on their own. So in this class, she said, hey, you can take this as an independent study. I'll give you the lessons you have to do. Like, it's a class, you have to do the lessons. But at the end of it, I want you to create a project. And I had never had, outside of my own independent learning, that autonomy in like a school setting. So now I had not only the drive to learn by myself, but a mentor that could guide me along the way. She was just a role model for me across all 4 years with Hack BI, and she was a former Army officer herself. So she kind of had that military connection. And more than anything else, Mrs. Kelly showed me really that if you're good at something, you kind of owe that to other people. So she could tell that I was very good at computer science, but never really praised me for it. It was always, okay, you have this talent. How are you going to use that to help people? And that's just something that you don't think about when you're 14 without somebody to guide you.
I want to talk next about some of the things you were involved in outside of the classroom. You just mentioned Hack BI. Can you tell our listeners what Hack BI is for those that might not know, and how you were involved in that when you were at Bishop Ireton as a student?
Hack BI is a 24-hour, overnight programming competition effectively at the school. The goal is to produce some kind of project by the end with a team of usually up to 4. When I was a freshman here, they were running Hack BI 2, and we did Hack BI 5 when I graduated. So some of my older brother Charlie's friends, close friends, ran Hack BI, and they encouraged me to just help out. They're like, hey, we always need a helping hand. It takes a year to plan. We start in January, and usually Hack BI happens in December or January. So they were like, hey, we need a helping hand. You know how to code. Could you come help out? And again, Mrs. Kelly, being the mentor that she was like, I think Critter can handle a little more responsibility, which I probably couldn't at the time, but I kind of rose to the occasion. And so over the course of 4 years, I went from just like helping plan the middle school portion of the event to running the whole event. And having Mrs. Kelly as that mentor really allowed me to learn not just how to plan an event, but how to be a leader. So yeah, Hack BI, easily one of the most formative experiences for me.
Critter, tell us a little bit about some internship opportunities during your high school days that you really knew you needed to go after to continue to expand. And I think it's great for the students to know, like, that are here now that are thinking, well, I don't know if I have time for that, or that might be hard to get. So it's sort of a two-part one where you got to sort of sometimes push the envelope and say, you know what, this is something I know I'm gifted in, and I need to get as much experience as I can, even while I'm in high school.
I was helping plan Hack BI, right? And I was working on that project I talked about in my independent study with Mrs. Kelly. The thing I was making was just a little app for Alexa, like Amazon Alexa, that could read Shakespeare plays, because my dad was super into Shakespeare, so read sonnets and such. And I worked on that, and I just, I knew it was something I was good at, and I had the guidance and mentorship of Mrs. Kelly to help me push myself throughout that project, right? So come Hack BI, the grand prize at the time for Hack BI was a summer internship at a company. At the time, it was called Decipher. And I obviously wasn't competing because I helped plan the event. But Mrs. Kelly pulled Chris Holmes, the CEO, aside, who, as an aside, is a father of multiple Bishop Ireton alumni. She pulled him aside and was like, hey, you should meet this kid, Critter. He's got a cool project. And he's like, all right. So I'm a sophomore in high school at this point, right? And Mrs. Kelly's like, I'm introducing you to Chris Holmes, and you are going to show him your project. Try and not sell it to him, but sell yourself to him, because I think he might offer you a job. And I remember the thought that went through my head is like, yeah, right, I'm 15. I'm not getting a job at a coding company. But I was like, okay, at the very least, out of this experience, I will learn how to do, an interview, and maybe something good comes out of it. But even if it doesn't, I'll learn how coding interviews work, or I'll learn how to talk to tech executives and stuff like that. So I show him this project, which, for a high school sophomore was, I'm sure, excellent, but I've looked back at the code since and I'm like, ugh. Anyway, I show it to him and his son, Alec, who graduated from here, and they looked at it, and he was like, and Chris, the CEO, was like, I would love to offer you an internship at Decipher this summer. And I was like, that would be incredible. My first fear was, I'm going to lose my summer, right? Because I was working 9 to 5. I was like, I'm going to lose my whole summer at this job. To anyone who's considering getting a summer job in high school, even if it's not necessarily an internship, I would say that, one, it's just a phenomenal experience. Two, you're not going to lose your summer. Because at the end of the day is blazing hot until 5 p.m. anyway, so nobody's doing anything. So I would go to my internship in the morning, and then I'd hang out with friends in the evening, every day, rinse and repeat. And that first summer was one of the best summers of my high school career. Because every day I would go and I would learn, and I would work really hard from 9 to 5, and then I would get home and I would relax, and I'd hang out with my family, and I'd go talk to my friends, and we'd go hang out. That was also a really important summer for learning the importance of personal management and just discipline, because at the end of the day, I would have to get myself to work from 9 to 5. I also, like I said, was 15, so I turned 16, didn't have my driver's license, had to figure out how to get there. And yeah, but I ended up having that internship that summer. They invited me back the following summer, and then I had that job all the way up until literally last week, where I finally had to say goodbye because I'm starting my time in the Navy. But I had that job all through college, and without that opportunity and without seizing that opportunity, like I said, Mrs. Kelly is my most influential non-family member. I call Chris Holmes my second most influential non-family member. Because without that opportunity, I would not be where I am today. And I'm really glad that, one, Mrs. Kelly pushed me to seize that, and two, that I was able to grab the bull by the horns when she offered it to me.
Our listeners know well the challenge of 2020. Our whole world does with the pandemic. But as someone who was in their junior year in high school at the time, can you tell us how it affected you for the remainder of that year and then your senior year and how that was impacted? Because there was a lot of schools that your senior year did not come back in until the spring of 2021 even. Just fascinated your perspective during that time as a high school student, and something that we all still are trying to grasp even happened.
That first week, I think it was a Tuesday, like Tuesday, March 14th or something like that. The school day ended, and I can't remember if we were leaving for spring break or if we must have been leaving for spring break soon after that. And basically what we found out is like, okay, we're going to be gone for a little longer than we thought because of this pandemic thing. And of course, you remember at the start, everybody's like, flatten the curve. It's going to be done in a couple weeks. Everybody go home. We're like, all right, no problem. So the first week or so, we were like, this is awesome. And of course, we're naive high school students. We're not really tapped into what's going on around the world. So we're like, long spring break, 3 weeks or so go by and we're all realizing, one, this is a terrible thing that's happening, not like a fun thing. And two, it's not going to be gone in a couple weeks. So for the end of my junior year, I was in AP Calc BC and AP US History, I think, were the two AP classes I was in. Those I think I remember the most just because we were prepping for AP exams at the time. And that was really when I saw how everything was just gonna be changing for the next few months. Because obviously you prep for these AP exams for the whole year. That's all you're doing, is you're learning and prepping for these tests. And they modified the calc exam, so it'd be like online and 2 questions, and the AP US exam was like, a document-based question and something else. And I have just this very vivid memory of sitting in my basement on my laptop, listening to my teacher talk about, how the class was going to be changing so that we could meet the new AP test requirements. For some reason, that memory sticks out to me the most of how things really changed for me that junior year. But anyway, then we get into that summer, and then in the fall, we had the opportunity to come back half and half. So we split the alphabet in half. First half of the alphabet could come in, 2 days a week, and the other half of the alphabet would come in the other 2 days, and you'd alternate, just to keep that separation, keep fewer people in the building. And a lot of my friends at West Potomac were given the same option. For some reason, because we had the option to stay fully virtual at Bishop Ireton, but for some reason the norm was get people in person, do the 6 feet separation. Everything was taken very seriously, but in-person learning was prioritized. I don't know if that was a cultural thing, because again, we had the option to not do that. But my friends at West Potomac, pretty much everybody was virtual. And I was just so thankful to be in person. I describe myself as an introvert, but those human interactions are just so important, especially for learning. And once we kind of were in the flow of things, we ended up kind of having I won't say fun, because obviously the pandemic wasn't fun, but finding ways to have those important high school events, like homecoming and stuff like that, just ways to celebrate and get out there with your friends, ended up being kind of an interesting challenge. I have this memory of sitting down in the new engineering room with Miss Slayton, and at the time, Miss McNutt, but obviously Mrs. Gerke, came in, and she was like, "Can I borrow you for a second?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, you can borrow me for a second." She pulls me out of class, because I was senior class president at the time, pulls me into this room that's got both the nurses, Mrs. McNutt, and Miss Jordan and myself and the student body president, Kara Zarnecki. And we're sitting in the room, and they're just like, okay, we had this crazy idea for homecoming. What if we do a homecoming, drive through where people decorate your cars? And we just sat there and brainstormed until we had created this event that people ended up having a ton of fun at. Obviously, the pandemic was bad, but we were able to have some fun with some of the challenges that came out of it.
And after that senior year of challenges, but also a chance to be back together in person, it was one of the most unique graduation ceremonies in the history of the school to ensure everyone's safety during that pandemic period. Graduation was held on Fannin Field. Tell us what you remember about that day.
That day was obviously very fun. It's high school graduation. And I was just really glad that we were going to be able to see everybody's face. So we were out on the field, out on Fannin Field, and we had like set up a stage for us to speak on. I had the opportunity to speak at graduation, which was awesome. But I just remember it was the year of like the 17-year like cicada coming up from the ground, right? So I'm standing there like giving my salutatory speech, and which obviously happens before you get your diploma. And I'm just looking out at this poor group of families that were just so eager to be there, and they were so happy to watch their kid graduate. And they were also 110 degrees on the field and using the programs, which just all became like cicada swatters. And it was just, everybody couldn't help but laugh, which is good because your two choices in that situation are kind of be miserable or laugh. But the day was just still so fun. I think that just is really exemplary of kind of that COVID landscape, but we had a good time.
Now, in the fall of 2021, you head to the University of Virginia, where you will join the Navy ROTC program and study computer science. What was your initial experience like at the school as you headed to Charlottesville, and now you're on to this next big stage of your life?
Yeah, so when I first got to UVA, like you said, I did Naval ROTC, and that first week, we get there a week before everyone else, and we like do the whole military thing. So we like shave our heads and everything. So I showed up that first week in blazing hot August with a shaved head, and got that military indoctrination. I was yelled at. It was pretty intense. And I also met some of the friends that have just become brothers and sisters to me, like some of the closest friends in my life that first week. Yeah, I mean, it was just amazing. My first impressions of Charlottesville were phenomenal, and really something that I came to be glad that I did was that first tough week there.
How do you feel Bishop Ireton best prepared you, Critter, for the rigor of college, especially at a school as renowned as UVA?
I think one thing Bishop Ireton's really good at is challenging students, and giving them the resources to complete that challenge on their own, but not holding people's hands. Because for a lot of my friends, getting to UVA was kind of a slap in the face. A lot of people get that initial dose of freedom. Like, what do you mean I don't have to go to class? You know what I mean? And it takes people a couple semesters to realize, okay, I got to pull myself up by my bootstraps. People aren't going to be there to do my homework. At Bishop Ireton, we were given challenging assignments and phenomenal teachers and the resources to complete those assignments. And it's high school. You're there for 8 classes, or we switched to the block schedule, but just doing your assignments and having a heavy workload prepped me more than I realized. Also, this school's very good at teaching kids to write, which is more important than you realize when you get to college, even as a computer science major.
You talk about that, just having that ability to be on your own and having to sort of step up and get things done and being able to learn true independence. What led you into other things as you look back at your 4 years at UVA that you enjoyed the most in Charlottesville?
One of the things that I love the most about UVA is the fact that it's surrounded by the city of Charlottesville. There's so much to do, but you don't feel overcrowded by like a big city. All of my favorite memories there are just, people talk about getting to college, and there's the college things you can do, go to parties and stuff like that. But all of my favorite memories are just like quiet moments with my friends. Like I said, that first week, we call it new student orientation, where you're getting yelled at. And I've met people that have just become phenomenal friends. And I learned to play the banjo when I got to UVA. And I'm not very good, but I have a friend who's, okay at guitar. And one of my favorite memories is just sitting like on my couch in my little basement apartment, and playing guitar and banjo, and both of us singing, even though neither of us are good. And, just those little moments have really created an excellent experience for me. And there's stuff that just came naturally out of these awesome friendships that I had.
You talked a little bit earlier, but I think because a lot of our current students get a chance to hear these podcasts, and it's always interesting, no matter what the age, to just expand on that, managing your time.
Totally.
So maybe if you could describe that part of where when you're in high school, you think like, the independence and all of that is going to be so great. But maybe for some of our current students here at Ireton that hear this particular podcast, sure, expand if you can on sort of the balancing act of it, having the independence, but it can also be so challenging. I'd love to just get more of your take on that, because you're right in the middle of the end of this 4-year journey in college.
I think learning to be disciplined about your time is one, probably the most important skill you can have just as an adult. And two, unfortunately, a skill that a lot of people just come into on their own. I'll talk a bit about that transition from high school to college. I think that's where you see it the most. But in high school, a lot of people play a sport. And if you're playing a sport and its practices after school, your daily routine looks something like, get up at 6:30, take a shower, go to school. That's till, 3:15. Then you've got practice till, Lord knows when, 5:30. And then you go home and you eat dinner, and then you do homework, and then you do it again every day for 5 days straight. You get to college and suddenly your classes, even though the material is much harder, your schedule is, I did ROTC, so that accounted for a couple days of my week. But for the most part, it's wake up whenever you want, go to your classes, probably, and do your work. But there's nobody there to hold your hand along the way. In particular, the things that end up taking most of your time is just the stuff about being an adult, like cooking your meals and stuff like that. So a lot of my friends and myself included, you get to college and you're just excited for this freedom, which you certainly have, but you realize after a couple weeks you can't live on ramen, and you're given often months to complete assignments, but you're given months for a reason. You have to get started on those assignments. So everybody has their own, ways of managing their time. Like I keep a daily planner because I need to keep myself in that, that short time scale. But you realize quickly that there are going to be the people that step up, get hard work done, plan out their weeks, and, they end up having more time because they're not bogged down by all the little things in between that they didn't plan for.
You just graduated this past Sunday, May 18th, so let me offer you congratulations. Now you're set to be commissioned in the Navy. I know you will be starting as a cyber warfare engineer this summer. Can you tell us about what this career would entail, and specifically about the importance of this work in an ever-expanding digital world that we live in?
The point of ROTC is to commission what they call unrestricted line officers. So usually that's people on ships, people in planes, and people on submarines. There's a few unique opportunities if you choose to pursue them, and the one that I chose was cyber warfare engineering, which is effectively the Navy's computer scientist, for lack of a better term. What I'll be doing right after commissioning is I'll head up to like Maryland, like DC area, to do some training. Then I'll head down to Virginia Beach for another school. And then after that, I'll be in the DC area doing and helping with cyber operations for the Navy. But yeah, effectively you're a cyber-oriented software engineer. And yeah, I'm just really excited to get started.
When you think about the future, I mean, there's so many ways you can go with this, as I'm going to ask you this question, but for your career and just artificial intelligence and the expansion of so many things that are happening in our world right now at such a warp speed, just, this can be a very open-ended question. Just tell us a little bit about how you see things from the career you're going in, a little bit about maybe some of your thoughts on artificial intelligence, and love to get your perspective, someone just coming out of college.
I love hearing when people say that, computer science is such a rapidly growing field. Because I've always seen every discipline, especially engineering disciplines, as a rapidly growing field. And the thing you learn in college isn't necessarily just the facts about computer science, right? Like if you wanted to learn how to code, you could do that online. You really learn how to learn and how to continue learning. And so for computer science, like, yes, there are been a lot of rapid developments recently. And I have a lot of friends that were worried about being able to get like an entry-level job with, if the AI takeover is going to happen and take over, these entry-level computer science jobs. What I'll say about that is that there's always going to be new tools and new ways of getting work done, and there have been for centuries. And I think I see AI as another great tool in the toolbox. It's not at a point where it's replacing people's jobs yet. Maybe it will someday. But one thing that has become a really important skill for me is, when the big one was ChatGPT, right? It came on the playing field and everybody started freaking out. The people that really had the advantage were the people that kept a cool head and were like, this is awesome. It's like a better version of, I don't know, Google. Like, let me figure out how to use this tool and how it can augment my workflow. So I think as computer science and engineering fields continue to change and grow, particularly with the advent of AI, it's really going to be just that, just another great tool in the toolbox.
Next, I want to ask you a little bit about your career in terms of how this all will sort of come full circle when you think back to your time at Bishop Ireton and how impactful the school and the teachers. You talked about your incredible mentor, Mrs. Kelly, but just tell us, if you can, to sort of close things out, when you look back specifically at your time at Bishop Ireton, how impactful was the school and the teachers here and the experience you had to where you are now as you begin this next journey of your lifetime?
Of course, I don't know what path I would be on without Bishop Ireton, but I can say with confidence that it wouldn't be this one, and this is a path that I'm really proud of and excited for. When I was here, like you said, I had Mrs. Kelly, and like I was talking about earlier, the most important lesson I think she taught me is that when you have a skill, you must use it to help other people. And I think without that mentorship and guidance, I would probably, not that there's anything wrong with just being a software engineer, for a private company. But I think that would probably be what I would, be doing after college. And I wouldn't know it, but I think that would be a little bit, I don't know, maybe unsatisfying for me. Without that guidance from Mrs. Kelly and, of course, the other phenomenal teachers and staff here that really pushed me to work hard and be my best self, I'm confident that I would be less proud of the person that I'm becoming and the job I'm getting into.
I want to ask you one last question about, as we came in today, you had a chance to stop by and see the legacy wall, the first 60 years of Ireton, and we're heading down after our podcast today to see the new chapel, and you had the unique timing of your high school experience to literally be a couple years that the 41,000 square foot academic center was being built, and then you got to enjoy it. But when you just pull up here 4 years after graduating and see this campus, give me some impressions.
It's just amazing to see that this place is always going to be growing and changing while maintaining the Bishop Ireton culture that we all love. When I was either a sophomore or junior, it was 2019 when Mrs. McNutt started as the head of school. It was just awesome to get an alumni as a head of school and to really keep that Bishop Ireton culture throughout all that growth. But yeah, even as I was driving up Cambridge Road and just looking at the school, it was awesome to see, because when like you said, the new academic center was built while I was here. So all the grass was new and stuff like that. It didn't feel lived in. But even walking through the hallways today and as I drove up the road, it was really just cool to see, like, this is all part of Bishop Ireton, like fully part of the school, seeing the students walk through the hallway that never knew when the academic center wasn't there. And this has just always been a part of their experience. It was just awesome to me. And I really hope this place, and I know it will, continue to grow while keeping that culture we all love.
That's Critter Johnson, BI class of 2021, whose cardinal spirit will fly as he begins what he hopes is a long career in the Navy. I'm Ryan Fannin, and you've been listening to Bishop Ireton's Real World Wednesdays.